Prime Minister Lawrence Wong says there'll be more support for local projects and ground-up initiatives as part of Singapore's 60th anniversary plans. Speaking at a news conference, he laid out some of the priorities for next year's budget, and they include job opportunities, training and support for citizens across different stages of life. He also shared if the upcoming budget would be geared towards the general election. Richa Mathew tells us more.
It was here at the National Press Centre in August that Prime Minister Lawrence Wong shared with the media about his constituency visits. And today, back in another session with the media, he says those visits has helped him understand the concerns of Singaporeans, and it will be translated into key focus areas for budget next year.
How we can provide support for Singaporeans across different life stages, as they enter the workforce, as they start up families, and then for those who are older, especially for those who feel sandwiched between looking after elderly parents and their children. And finally, what we can do to strengthen our sense of solidarity and unity, especially as we mark SG60 next year.
Other areas include building a strong economy and skills training for emerging job roles. PM Wong stresses that these are preliminary ideas and that he's open to review, reset and change policies. That's why consultations with Singaporeans will begin in December this year to set the tone for Budget 2025. One such effort as part of SG60 plans to support ground-up initiatives and local projects in the community.
It's not just to celebrate, it's not just to commemorate, but it's also to show greater concern for our fellow citizens and more disadvantaged members of our society. So these are things we have in mind for SG60, but there will be, I think, certainly opportunities later on to flesh out more of these plans.
With the general election penciled in for next year, PM Wong says the upcoming budget could be the last one for this term of the government. He adds that the Electoral Boundaries Review Committee has not yet been formed, but preparations for the polls are underway. PM Wong says he has been active on the ground looking for potential candidates to join the party. He hopes to unveil a set of new faces for the upcoming election. He adds that every election, MPs who have served 3 terms or more may be asked to step down for renewal.
I think what's vital is we continue to do our best, all of us, government, people, political parties, all of us working together to make sure we never end up in a situation where society is divided, is polarized. We try our best to not to go down the path of political populism and opportunism, but find ways to keep our society strong, united, and maintain that high level of trust, because that's essential for Singapore to stay relevant and to survive in this new world.
He says at the end of the day, the choice lies with Singaporeans to weigh what's at stake and choose the right party to govern them.
Now, for more analysis, I'm now joined by Dr. Mustafa Izzuddin, Senior International Affairs Analyst at Solaris Strategies Singapore. Dr. Mustafa, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Now, PM Wong says he has not yet decided on when the election process should start. What do you think are his main considerations when deciding on an opportune time to call for one?
There are several considerations, and the first is whether the party is ready. The candidates that they want to field are ready to contest. They're also going to be looking at, he will also be looking at the ground sentiments, whether the ground is ready, how strong is the domestic social compact, and of course, looking at the state of the economy. I think these are some of the key considerations that he will take into account before deciding when to call the elections.
You know, PM Wong talked about how those who have served 2 to 3 terms would be asked to step down to make way for renewal. And the hunt for new political candidates is also underway. What do you think are some qualities he will be looking out for in the new faces, given that there are a few gaps to fill here?
I think the qualities will be more or less the same. Being able to show empathy, compassion, being able to relate to the ground, being able to be actively engaged in parliamentary debates. So I think those are some qualities that I think are consistent. from the past. But I think where there may be some where it may differ is can the newer faces being able to relate to a newer generation of voters, those that may have differing preferences, differing interests. So being able to speak for them, and also perhaps being better attuned with digital technology. So a newer generation of voters in which the newer faces will be able to connect. So maybe that's where there might be a certain, maybe the area that might differ.
Do you foresee potential political candidates to be held at even greater scrutiny here following, the recent scandals from the various political parties?
Yes, I think there is the possibility, but I don't think the party would overhaul the existing system of recruitment. I think what they may do is, given what has happened, to tighten their procedures. Perhaps there will be greater scrutiny. But I think the way that they have chosen the candidates, I think the system has bore fruit. So I think that system will remain, but I think they may well tighten it up, given what has happened.
Do you think there'll be a challenge here for them in trying to select good candidates for the party?
I think there will be challenges because it's not easy to put yourself, in front, being a political figure, being in front of the public. So it's not easy, but I think it's a calling. So if you want to put yourself forward to be able to serve Singaporeans, then I think that is one attribute that you need to have. So I think it's always a challenge, but I think there are people who are willing to come to the front, come to the fore, and to serve Singaporeans in true politics.
Meanwhile, Dr. Mustafa, Singapore is celebrating 60 years of independence in 2025. How far do you see SG60 go in influencing political sentiments on the ground? Would it be a repeat of G15 that happened during SG50, perhaps?
It will certainly be a pivotal factor. And I think voters looking at Singapore now turning 60 next year, there will be a feel-good factor. And I think that would influence the way they would vote. If you look back at G15 in 2015, when we had the general elections, it was the popular vote was around 70%. So that's quite high. So that, I think one could say, did the 50 years of Singapore in 2015 did play a part. So I think we may well see that in 2025 as well. And certainly it will be a pivotal factor. That's not the only factor, but one that can certainly influence how people will vote.
And, PM Wong, earlier also said that the choice lies with Singaporeans at the end of the day to weigh what is at stake and to choose the right party to govern. What do you think that would look like as we operate and live in an increasingly polarized world? How effective do you think his messaging of solidarity and unity will be here?
I think that message of unity, of compassion, of staying together, I think is incredibly important and essential. I think we've seen polarization across the world. We've seen polarization in the recent US election. So I think in the case of Singapore, it's important to ensure that polarization does not take place during election and after the electoral outcome. So, but in Singapore, I think the voters are by and large pragmatic. The middle ground voter have been able to discern what is good for Singapore and vote in the way that they feel is right for Singapore. And also interest does not have to come at the expense of values. So both interest and values can go hand in hand. And I think that messaging is going to be crucial in countering polarization when we have our elections next year.
All right, appreciate your insights, Dr. Mustafa. That was Dr. Mustafa Izzuddin, Senior International Affairs Analyst at Solaris Strategy Singapore.